You're listening to the Out of Bounds Show, fueled by Fleetway Market. Whether you're on the road to the tailgate or headed up to hunting camp, stop by Fleetway Market to fuel up the car and the cooler today.
Are you ready? Yes!
Now live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge inside the BankPlus Studio.
You are
listening to
Mississippi's #1 sports talk show, The Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds.
Streaming worldwide live on the Out of Bounds radio app and on your radio.
At ESPN 105.9. The Zone.
All right, good morning. Welcome in. Out of Bounds, brought to you by the Rack of Lamb. Ooh, hello. We'll go with the rack of lamb and a side of mushrooms. Kick it off with some homemade hot tamales. Kessler Prime in the Renaissance. Visit KesslerPrime.com to make a reservation. It's going to be fun, wild, crazy. Who knows what will happen in the game. But, oh, man, it's going to be nuts this weekend in Oxford. But really, I think the party starts tonight. I think TR just texted me about Kiffin. Kiffin is lighting the Christmas lights on the square tonight at 6, a week early for game day. Blake, you just love that.
You cannot make that up, man.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
So, and that's smart of Oxford to go ahead and have all the,
might as well.
festive lights, I guess, going as you're going to host College Game Day on ESPN. Hey, Blake, it's built by the Home Depot. All right, we're live in the BankPlus Studio, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Reese Davis, Kirk Herbstreit, Corso, Desmond Howard, The Bear, and more, all in Oxford for game day. 7-2 versus 7-2. Vegas had it at basically a pick 'em. -1. A&M moved to the public. You moved it to 2.5. Vegas has this as a toss-up. So, I mean, is that where we're going to go? All the way down to the wire, 9:30 at night in Oxford. One possession to see which way this thing goes. A&M and maybe their, I don't know, O-line / running backs making a play, or Corral, Ely, Snoop, maybe Sanders making a play. Late?
If you had to gamble right now.
If I had to gamble right now. I gamble every day, baby.
It is a one-possession game, or it is a two-possession plus game?
If I had to gamble, I'd say it's a one-possession game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Twice this season, Ole Miss.
I mean, I have A&M. It's early. I have A&M winning. But when you just throw out the over-under as low as it is, considering Ole Miss has been dancing in the 72 to 77 range all season,
pretty
which
much
is
all year,
unreal as far as totals and points and so on. And did you throw out to me a 55.5?
55.5.
That's a lot of respect for that A&M defense. That is a lot of respect. Now, what do I do with Ole Miss? The fact that they only scored 3 points in the second half against Liberty? Do I chalk that up to they were not interested and they weren't from the get? Did you see the first few possessions of that game?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a dead stadium. Ole Miss did not care about it. Again, I don't blame them. I mean, you're getting this from all the teams. It just depends on the week. So how much do I really read into the fact that Ole Miss only scored 3 points in the second half? I think they were already thinking about, some good food on the square. Or in the Grove, whatever.
They were wondering if they were going to see anybody out partying later that night.
Yeah.
No, there's no doubt.
So I'm kind of over that. I'm not going to read too much into that. I just think it was an absolute, we're going through the motions. We're ready to get out of here. I'm done. We're thinking about A&M.
Yep, exactly.
We're thinking about A&M. A&M won later that day. I can't believe the Saturday night that we had this past weekend with all those games. I can't believe the Gators got beat by 23. Was it 40-17? It feels like feels like a lifetime.
How do you
ago.
give up 40 points to South Carolina? I mean, woof.
Yeah. All right. And then Kentucky, Tennessee was wild at 45-42.
That was a great game.
And then I kept waiting for Bama to just put the boot down. Didn't happen.
Does that say more about Alabama or more about LSU?
I think this year it says more about Alabama.
I agree.
Yeah.
Also, can't you argue maybe a little bit? I can't believe I'm saying this.
Well, you love to argue,
think
so tell me what we're doing.
We've already heard from Will Anderson this year, Alabama defensive end, that there was a lack of focus, a lack of commitment to football in the Alabama locker room. Could that have reared its head a little bit against LSU? Some players walking in thinking this team's not any good.
Yeah, they know. Kids know. And we already know all of our guys, all of our teams, or even in the NFL, they're not. It's impossible to get up every weekend.
Although it's crazy. That's why I say it's crazy to say that when you think about Alabama facing an LSU team. You would think that's a game that you would get up for, but I just think.
But LSU's not any good.
Not this year, exactly. Yeah.
And they weren't any good last year.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago for that Alabama team with Joe, I mean, that's so far removed
You're
from
right. Absolutely.
what they're thinking about. You know, they were thinking boat race, cakewalk, we're done. And, of course, that gives Saban an opportunity to go crazy.
Coach them up.
Yeah.
Rat poison.
And act like a wild man. Who does
They have New Mexico State.
Good gravy. Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, brought to you by Juniker Jewelry Store. If you're in the market for an engagement ring, one stop. They'll take care of you guys. You don't want to screw this up. Juniker Jewelry Store in Madison on Highland County. Juniker Jewelry Store will take care of you. Also, earrings, necklaces, bracelets, anniversaries, and such. Birthdays, you name it. Juniker Jewelry Store in Madison. We'll have Chris Doering coming up at 8:30, SEC Network. We will get his thoughts on A&M and Ole Miss, Mississippi State and Auburn, and the Dan Mullen deal.
Dan Mullen
saga.
Fall apart? Yeah, I don't know.
He's going to flip his staff. If you're a Florida well, there's not many Dan Mullen fans listening. If you're a Gator fan, you want this to work. You don't want to flip the building again. I know all of us get all hot and bothered about doing this, and then you don't want to do this. Mullen's track record is really good, but he's in a bad spot. I never thought that he would be in this spot. I understand that most coaches, even Dabo this year at Clemson, go through, other than Saban, coaches go. I mean, Kirby Smart got beat by South Carolina 2 years ago. All right. No, he did.
I know. It was incredible.
At home.
He ran the ball 3 times, kicked a 48-yard field goal to tie.
Yes.
It's my favorite Kirby Smart.
He played Bo Schembechler football, and he lost the game.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. So.
But I thought it was interesting what Luganville said on Monday, that it looked like, and you can't argue this, that Mullen had lost the team. That's somewhat surprising. That part was the part that was a little, I mean, like you said, to get
I agree.
Embarrassed by South Carolina the way they were embarrassed, I mean, you might as well have played all, fans. You would have had the same score. Me and you could have gotten out there and scored a touchdown for South Carolina.
Wow.
5-7 with 3 games to go, and the odds of them going 3-0 are excuse me, not 5-7, 4-5.
What?
Yeah, 4-5 with 3 games to go. I mean, that's not good.
Well, they need to beat Samford this weekend. I can say that. Chris Doering, former Gator great, All-American under Spurrier, will join us at 8:30 on Dan Mullen, on A&M Ole Miss, and on Mississippi State and Auburn. Can't wait to talk to CD. You see him every week on the SEC Network. We're live in the BankPlus Studio. BankPlus, it's more than a name, it's a promise. Blake, we want our listeners to fuel up at Fleetway Market, 22 locations. Jackson, Hattiesburg, Brookhaven, Columbia, you name it. Fleetway Market, 22 locations. And then, these are high-end service stations. Nice. This is where you want to fuel up on your way to Oxford, the hunting camp, NOLA, the beach. Fuel up at Fleetway Market, and don't forget in Gluckstadt that they have the Market Cafe. Fantastic food, great selection of import and craft beer. and to-go items. Fuel up at Fleetway Market in any of their 22 locations. Chris Doering at 8:30. You're listening to the Out of Bounds podcast, brought to you by the Premium Cigars at Havana Smoke Shop in Jackson and on the Reservoir. Havana Smoke Shop for your premium cigars. Mullen loses to Samford. Does Florida run him? I don't know.
Can you tarmac somebody if you don't fly out of your own stadium?
Wow. I guess you could locker room. Well, didn't Arkansas did that to Brett Bielema a few years ago? Jeff Long?
Fire him in the locker.
Fired him like
right outside the
in
door?
the tunnel or
Yeah,
something?
I think that's correct.
That worked out for them. Their next hire was awesome. Chad Morris. Anyway, no, I don't know if he can survive losing to Samford. And I don't want to surprise y'all, but I haven't followed Samford football this year. At one point, Chris Hatcher was their head coach who was tied into Mike Leach and Hal Mumme. He was the big-time quarterback for Valdosta State when Leach and Mumme went through there and won big and so on. I don't know if Hatch is still there or not. A lot of people thought that, think that he's a heck of a coach. Samford is 3-5. There's your update on Samford in Florida. We'll have Chris Doering coming up next, SEC Network. He played wide receiver at Florida and under Steve Spurrier. CD at 8:30.
Chris Hatcher is the head coach of the Samford Bulldogs.
All right.
Just for you to
as he was a few years ago when they walked into Davis Wade and put up some big offensive numbers.
Dang, he's been a head coach for 21 years at 4 different schools. He's 157 and 86.
Strong.
That's really
He's a good football coach.
That's really good.
Yeah. Of course, coming out of that Valdosta State program.
He coached at Georgia Southern. We mentioned that. What was that, Monday we were talking about?
Irk Russell used to hit people in the middle of his forehead. Well, he would hit their helmet. This was 1980s football. So he would headbutt his players and start a trickle of blood down the middle of his forehead, down his nose, because that makes you play harder.
Gets you ready.
It gets you ready. No question.
Speaking of coaching.
More Oklahoma, more bull in the ring. All that is the path to more W's.
You got to strain harder. That's what it's all about.
It is about the strain. I don't know if it is in Gainesville, but evidently it is in some other places.
Someone's not straining hard enough. That's why.
Well, and John Hevesey's gone, so I don't know who's going to strain now. Because Hevesey always looked like he was straining.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So, what was the coaching rumor that you and I discussed before the show? And I don't know if it's a rumor. I guess it could be fact. Who's just interviewed for the open job at TCU?
Deion Sanders.
Deion Sanders. Do you know what
Prime
else?
time.
You know what else?
Did you say Coach Deion Sanders?
No, I didn't. That's on.
Wow.
Me. My fault, Coach.
Demerits.
I'll run laps.
Demerits.
I'm gonna do up downs in the hallway.
Yeah.
Deion Sanders. Not only did he interview with TCU, and of course it went swimmingly, because why wouldn't it? Oklahoma fans are now questioning whether or not Deion Sanders and his coaching staff at Jackson State is better than their staff at Oklahoma.
What?
Yeah, true story.
Is that from Message Board Genius?
Yeah, of course.
God, I love that.
It's my favorite account on Twitter.
I love it. I love it.
Deion Sanders to TCU?
Coach Deion Sanders.
22?
Could he be making the move? Well, he's already got a house there. Are they going to follow up Gary Patterson?
Yeah, 22 years of Gary Patterson. You can follow
who's
that
known
up
as
Deion?
like this excellent coach with primetime.
Stop it.
Primetime.
What?
What if he does this? He will have accomplished what he wanted to do. Parlay that job into skipping a few steps and getting a job in the Big 12.
And how good is that TCU job in the next 5 years? I think it could be fantastic, because I don't think the Big 12 is going to lose its seat at the table as a P5. I think they'll maintain a tie in with the playoff. And when Oklahoma and Texas leave, it's Oklahoma State, TCU, and I guess Baylor as the top 3 schools in that conference now. If you're at TCU, if you handle this right, and
you're in position
to be in the playoff every 3 years.
They've spent over $250 million at TCU since Patterson's been the head coach,
and that's really low, honestly.
So they've got some, Ritz-Carlton type facilities. They're right there in Fort Worth. We all know what the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Deion is Deion. I don't know.
Boy.
Yeah.
What does it do, too, for coaching so we talk about barrier breakers, right? Jackie Robinson, right? Mississippi State playing the game of change in basketball and college basketball. Deion Sanders doing this, going from
his HBCU.
But not just that, but being like a player and NFL analyst with no coaching experience to go and just say, I'm going to coach at Jackson State, and then in 2 seasons, not even 2 full seasons, a season and a half, he's going to go to the Big 12. What would that do for guys down the road? I mean, that changes the narrative of how you hire coaches somewhat, right?
Maybe Eddie George at Tennessee State can do the same. It's a good question, Blake.
That would be crazy.
That's a big jump from, like you said, Jackson State, 2 years as a head coach. Do I think Deion's a really good X's and O's coach? No. Do I think he can work the living rooms and build a lot of excitement? Would he ever pull a Dabo and Ed Ogeron for 1 year? Some of these guys Sam Pittman, that are willing to be a CEO, but can Deion actually go out and identify a really strong OC and a really strong DC? I doubt it, but maybe.
What are the chances if Deion goes to TCU that a second college in the Dallas area gets the death penalty?
Well, maybe he should hire Eric Dickerson and Craig the Pony James.
No, I don't think. I think Mike Leach would tell you don't want Craig James anywhere near your program.
Well, that's he tanked SMU and then he torched Texas Tech.
Nailed it, baby.
What's next?
Nailed it.
Primetime leaves. I wonder how many people at Jackson State would be cheering.
Oh,
if primetime.
He's brought a lot of attention to Jackson State.
He has.
Do you think it's been?
But are people really watching Jackson State football or not?
Let me ask you this question: overall, do you think there's been a positive influence on Jackson State since hiring Deion Sanders? Like, if he left at the end of the season, did they come out better than when they went in?
Yeah. I don't think it's some kind of like
astronomical
growth.
Yeah.
No. Because he said that when he was hired.
He'd have to be there more than 2 years. I mean, he'd have to be there 4 or 5 years.
He'd need to be there like 6 or 7 years and win big.
Yeah. He's gone the first good. If TCU offers him the job, you gone.
Oh, yeah. And now that he's got a job, you make a good point. Can he find, he can sell when he gets in there. I mean, he's going to look great in a suit. He can woo the committee member / athletic director. Yeah. Right. And he can say, look, I've lived here forever. I know everybody. Da-da-da-da-da.
Boy, what a turn of events that would be if Deion Sanders left Jackson State after a year and a half to go to TCU.
That'd be more power to him to make $3+ million. I mean, or more?
I think it'd be more. Yeah. And is he going to take his whole staff from Jackson State? I mean, like, putting a staff together at that level, are you going to be able to handle all that, Deion? Like, oh, man.
That's a lot going on, man.
You're
talking about hiring over 20, 25, 30 people.
And with all due respect to his staff at Jackson State, but it's not just a plug and place. Like, it's a whole different level out there.
Yeah, you'll get worked by Mike Gundy if you don't have your I know that's not a great league, but Matt Campbell at Iowa State will work you on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Mike Gundy will work you. Dave Aranda, maybe if he emerges as a...
Hey, they've been good this year.
Yeah. There you go. Is Larry Fedora still his OC?
I think so.
Wow. Incredible. I had a steak dinner with Fedora one night. That's an intense man.
That's cool.
Yeah, I thought he was going to, like, smash his drink the whole night. CD, Chris Doering, SEC Network, former Gator great, will join us on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. CD, Chris Doering, coming up next on 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, WRKS.
You're listening to the Out of Bounds Show podcast, presented by Independent Roofing Systems. If you want it done right the first time, visit Independent Roofing Systems today.
Listen carefully.
You're listening to the Insider Hit on the Bolt Bound Show.
Fueled by Fleetway Market.
Fuel up your car and cooler at Fleetway this football season.
Let's go.
All right, good morning. Welcome in. The Out of Bounds Show is driven by the Jeep Grand Cherokees and Ram trucks at Mack Hike in Flowood, MackHikeFlowwood.com. Pre-owned and new Ram trucks, Jeep Grand Cherokees. You're listening to ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We welcome in Chris Doering, All-American at Florida. You can see him and find him on the SEC Network every week throughout football season. And CD joins us on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. All right, CD, I think we're on the same page, at least somewhat, that the last thing you want to do in any sport, but in college football, is continue to flip the building, so to speak, because it puts you behind and you don't get any continuity and so on. However, Mullen, this thing has gone off the rails. I think if anybody can get it back on, it is him. You're a Gator. Give me your kind of state of the state of where we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Obviously, it's not where you want to be, but I feel like there's a pretty good amount of equity built up over the last 3 seasons, given that Dan Mullen came in and inherited a 4-7 football team from Jim McElwain and turned them into back-to-back-to-back New Year's Six bowl teams. So, you know, to think that all of a sudden, you know, the guy forgets how to coach or forgets how to call plays, or it doesn't make sense to me. So there are certainly some things that need to be corrected, but I'm with you. I think, you know, I've regarded Dan Mullen as one of the best play designers, play callers in game that there is in college football over the last couple seasons. And so when you have somebody like that, you know, that's something to build on. Not to mention the fact that I think he understands the culture of Florida football and has had some success here. So to me, it's just about making tweaks, making it known that this is a season that becomes a do or die in 2022. But, you know, I think like in any other job or industry, like, you know, I think Gator fans especially, hold themselves to a different, hold Dan Mullen, hold the coach at the University of Florida to a different level of expectation than we would in any other job. As a boss, you know, I own other companies. I speak to my employees. I tell them that the performance is not up to the level of my expectation. I have, you know, a mutual plan put in place for what we're going to do to get back on track. And then if things don't work out, then you make a move. But to overreact right now in the midst of this season, I think would be unfair to, you know, Dan Mullen. And I think it would also be a detrimental move for Florida themselves to start back over again without there being any sort of clear-cut home run hire that you're going to go get that's going to immediately make you better than what you are now. I just think is irresponsible.
Chris Doering, CD, on the Out of Bounds Show with the SEC Network, talking Mullen and the Gators. You know, we followed Mullen every week, every game for years here. And he had some ups and downs, but most successful coach in Mississippi State's history. The one thing that didn't happen, CD, is his team never quit on him. And I don't know if that happened or not last weekend. But when somebody has maybe said that to you or text you that within the last few days, do you think the team has quit on him? Or no, they just had a terrible performance?
Well, you mentioned, you know, what people text me, and my phone blows up on Saturday nights when Florida doesn't do well, from, you know, good friends that are Gator fans to casual folks to opponents that want to rub it in. So it's a lot of activity that's going on my phone between text messages and Twitter and everything else. But I had a friend that said, you know, those guys, they look like they completely quit. I don't blame them given the season they're having. I said, of course I blame them. Like, you're a college football player. You get 4 or 5 years to come out and play 12 games a season, man. It's an incredibly special opportunity to get to do what these kids get to do. And maybe they don't have the foresight, or maybe they don't have the maturity to appreciate it in the midst of it at times. But I think, being able to put on that uniform, and especially getting to go play in an environment like Williams-Brice Stadium on a Saturday night, it doesn't get much better than that. So, I find it hard to believe, given what I said earlier, that Dan Mullen inherited a team in his first season that went 4-7 the year before, largely a roster made up of guys he didn't recruit, that he had no relationship with, and turned them into a 10-win football team. That means that he's able to connect with the guys, and I just have a hard time believing that he's not able to do that now. There were a lot of stories around last week about the flu hitting the team and them being depleted in numbers and practice time. Maybe that has something to do with their performance on Saturday night. But, this was a record, a roster, a schedule that I thought got much easier in November, and I expected them to win all 4 of the football games. And then you're looking at an 8-4 team that goes to a bowl game and maybe wins 9 games, and you evaluate how the season finished, and maybe you find a quarterback, maybe you find some rhythm on offense that you can build upon going into 2022. But losing to South Carolina, a team that's depleted in scholarship athletes, that's down to their third-string quarterback and getting not only beaten but blown out, that leads me to believe that anybody left on the roster, short of Samford this week, is capable of beating Florida. With Missouri, a trip to Columbia coming up, and having to play Florida State at home, Florida is not immune from losing another game. So if they don't get their stuff back on track, then you could see something drastic happen and some sort of illustration of the team maybe quitting on their head coach.
Chris Doering on the Out of Bounds show and the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. So I thought he handled himself well on Monday. I watched all 24 minutes of the press conference. They were taking shots left and right, all that. He handled himself well. Now, prior to that, he missed a little bit, kind of a PR nightmare, if you will. Were you surprised that he said what he said about recruiting, and it went, I guess, maybe as viral as it did, and the fan base got as upset as they did, CD?
Well, the recruiting thing has been a point of sensitivity around here for the last couple of years, and Florida fans expect the same sort of success on the field and on the recruiting trail that Alabama has every year, and that Georgia has had of late. Like, it's not necessarily realistic. So to compare yourself to them is going to leave you feeling a little underwhelmed constantly. So the recruiting thing was something that fans had talked about and complained about, the staff's inability to recruit at a high level. With that being said, the last 3 years, signing classes have not been terrible. I think we're talking about like a number 7 class, a number 9 class, a number 12 class, not where Florida wants to be necessarily, but not exactly horrible. Now, I do think Florida needs to recruit better on the lines of scrimmage, particularly the defensive line. That's a spot of I think, weakness when it comes to evaluating the roster. They've got to find a way to keep the top talent in state as well. Georgia, Alabama, Clemson all coming in and taking some of the top players from high school year in and year out. So they've got to find a way to put the wall up around the border again. But the reason that the recruiting thing, I think, struck him so badly was, remember, he's got a show cause dating back to being put on NCAA probation from a violation a couple years ago. That rolled over from last year to this year due to the pandemic. When he asked him about what's going on in recruiting originally during the bye week, he didn't get into it much, and I imagine it has to do with wanting to avoid that talk of not being able to go out and recruit like every other head coach can during the bye week. And then after losing, I can see you, man, losing to Georgia, having the kind of season you are. Do you want to necessarily answer questions about recruiting in the middle of the season? I don't, but I think he could have handled it better. And you know this, Bo. You've been around the guy for a long time. He doesn't have the greatest sense of awareness sometimes. I mean, last year after the Texas A&M loss, he said we needed to pack the swamp in the middle of a global pandemic, only to get tested positive for COVID himself a couple days later. He showed up wearing a Darth Vader costume after inciting a brawl in the middle of the Missouri game last year. So dealing with the media, having awareness of being able to read the room has not always been his strong suit. Somebody obviously talked to him before the press conference on Monday, whether it was Scott Strickland or Megan Mullen. Somebody got to him and said, hey, you're not doing yourself any favors here. Let's address things. Let's be a grown-up. Let's treat the media like they're our friends instead of our enemies. and turn it into something we can use as a positive instead of something that's going to linger for a long period of time. And I'm with you. I thought he did a good job. If we're going to complain about all of the bad media appearances, we need to give him praise when the good ones show up too, and I thought he did a nice job on Monday.
Gator All-American under Steve Spurrier, now with the SEC Network. Chris Doering, CD, joins us on the Out of Bounds show. All right, this is a little bit of a slippery slope, so you can go whatever direction you want here. All right, recruiting. You look at what Kirby and Saban are doing. Jimbo has moved A&M into the top 5. And then you got LSU and Ohio State. But really, you've got you've got Bama and Georgia, and then it's kind of a drop, and then a couple other teams. And I think there's a huge gap between like number 2 and like number 7, what you were just referencing. Because right now, on 247 Sports Composite, the Gators have the 7th best talent in the country. I don't know if Florida or Dan Mullen, because Florida prides themselves on being a top 10 public university and somewhat being above the fray in what happens now when it comes down to throwing down in the streets for top prospects. I don't think Mullen is ever going to be as aggressive as Kirby, Saban, Jimbo. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not. I mean, it's a full-time job, man. Recruiting is obviously the lifeblood of college football, but it requires a lot of attention. And, God, I couldn't imagine having to do that as a grown-ass man kissing the butt of 18 to 22-year-old kids,
Amen.
16, 17, 18-year-old kids, and parents that think their kid's the next best thing and the entitlement that they have. Like, I wouldn't want to do that job. And so I think that's part of the reason why I have – hunches at some point in time he's probably going to want to go to the NFL if he has that opportunity. I mean, just the lifestyle of a college coach takes a unique person these days. With that being said, like I don't necessarily agree with recruiting to rankings either. I like evaluating talent based upon what I think is going to be a good fit for my scheme and what I believe I can develop. But I do think in college football these days, there's 3 positions that you have to recruit really well at. It's the offensive line, it's the defensive line, as I mentioned ago, and it's at the quarterback spot. A year ago, Florida was primed to have a tremendous season because they had a veteran quarterback surrounded with some really good talent, and that can mask a lot. Heading into this season, she was on the other foot between the Georgia and Florida dynamic. Georgia was returning not only 1 veteran quarterback, but 2, and Florida was starting all over again with a couple guys that had never made a collegiate start. That's going to hurt you. You look around the top teams in the country, it really is all about quarterback play. So Florida, I think, has to figure out who their guy is going forward, try to manage that quarterback position in terms of recruiting and keeping them on the roster as best as possible and try to create some continuity going forward. And that's one of the reasons why that they hired Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen was brought in because they were looking for the ability to win games, doing it with offensive flair,
Sure.
and developing the quarterback. And that's exactly what Dan Mullen was known for, and that's exactly what he's done. Now, all of a sudden, everybody wants to say, oh, he's not a great recruiter. Well, you had a great recruiter in Will Muschamp. Will Muschamp is maybe the quintessential great recruiter, and you ran him out of town because you weren't winning enough games or weren't winning the right way. So, I get sick of a lot of Florida fans, and I consider myself to be one of them. Having grown up here in Gainesville, probably gone to more games than most Florida fans. I donate more money than probably most Florida fans. I certainly spend more blood, sweat, and tears on the field than most Florida fans. But the entitlement that they have and what they believe is a possibility for their program in the midst of having to play against Nick Saban in the same conference and what you said Jimbo Fisher is creating and Kirby Smart, it's not going to be possible or realistic to win the SEC every single year. And you just made a great run last year. You went toe-to-toe with Alabama in the SEC championship game. I think Florida fans have to be a little more realistic right now about what the landscape of college football, particularly in the SEC, looks like.
I like it. CD on the Out of Bounds show. Let's switch gears. A&M at Ole Miss. What do you see? Who do you like and why?
Golly, you probably know I was as huge an Ole Miss fan as there could have been in the off season. I love Matt Corral and went on the record thinking that they were going to beat Alabama, which I still believe, if things go a little differently, it could have been a much more competitive game, but that's a story for another day. I hate what we've seen in the depletion of their roster over the last couple weeks. Being down Jonathan Mingo for as long as they've been out, and Braylon Sanders just coming back, and Dontario Drummond being out, and Matt Corral being banged up and not being able to use him as much in the run game as you probably would like, leads me to believe that they're a little shorthanded and going into this game kind of in the opposite direction. A&M feels to me like a team that's surging at this point, figuring things out on offense, at least with their offensive line and their run game. Their defense is lights out. I would like to see more consistency from Zach Calzada, maybe regain some of that form from the night in College Station against Alabama. But I wish I could see this Ole Miss team at full strength. At full strength, I'd be tempted to take them, but I don't know without really knowing what the health of the roster, particularly the offensive side, is going to be on Saturday.
All right. I don't know how many more times we'll get you between now and the SEC championship game. So let me just play out a couple of scenarios here real quick. Mm-hmm. Georgia has not been challenged, CD. Bama has lost.
I don't like that narrative, by the way, Bo. I'm going to stop you there because I hear it every week. Every Sunday I wake up to texts about, you guys stop slobbing all over Georgia. They haven't played anybody. They played everybody that's on the schedule, right? That's all you can do, and they've been dominant in every situation. I mean, you look around the country, there's a bunch of average teams, including the number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams in the college football playoff poll last night. It's Georgia and everybody else. And so I don't buy that, hey, they haven't played anybody. They're not that good a team. We'll see. Tell me who really creates a lot of strain for this Georgia team, particularly their defense. After watching Alabama's offense on Saturday night, do we really feel like it's going to put pressure on Georgia's defense? Do we feel like
all right, that was my question.
They're able to get there, so going to do it? I don't buy all that, man.
All right, so and what I was saying is they haven't been challenged. Obviously, you're right. They've dominated everybody on the schedule. But having said that, depending on who gets there, Bama or A&M. Now, Bama has, it looks like, a better passing offense, right, than A&M. So you can't run on these guys.
When they can protect the football, look at the other night. Look at even dating back to the A&M game. They've had issues up front on the offensive line. Obviously, losing the center on Saturday hurt and having to slide over their tackle to the center spot and playing. But they are deficient on the offensive line, and they're deficient in their front seven. I think it's a bad recipe for matching up with Georgia.
Gotcha.
I think Georgia beats them by double digits.
Okay. I just didn't know. Look, Georgia's better. Georgia's going to be better Labor Day to Thanksgiving. I was just thinking a one-off, 3.5 hours in Atlanta. Bama's been there. The pressure will be on Georgia if you thought it would be close. Obviously, you're looking at a 2-possession game pretty much regardless of who makes it, whether it's Bama or A&M.
Yeah, I think it's a 2-possession game with anybody that makes it to Atlanta or anybody that makes it to the college football playoffs. That defense is as dominant as we've seen, and you're right. Who can run on that defense? You're not going to line up. You got to hit some big plays in the passing game. I'm excited to see what Tennessee can do in that way this week. I mean, I think that's one of the great stories of the SEC this season is what they've been able to do. Hendon Hooker, 21 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. Guys that can make plays down the field. If there is one deficiency, it's guys making plays in the secondary in one-on-one situations, and I think the secondary for Georgia doesn't always play the ball in the air as well as they could. But again, we're splitting hairs, so I think this is a great litmus test on Saturday in Knoxville for maybe what teams can do potentially. If Tennessee can't have any success, I don't know who has success this year offensively against them.
All right, we'll leave it there. Chris Doering, SEC Network. CD on the Out of Bounds show, and the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. Are you still having a blast every weekend?
Love it, man. It's the greatest job, second greatest job in the world next to playing. I love getting to do what I do, but I don't think there's any other teams out there in the market for a 48-year-old wide receiver, so I'm going to stick to what I got going now, man.
I love the chemistry. You, Chiswick, and Dari and Ben Watson, it's gold on Saturday night and Sunday morning. Keep up the good work, buddy. Talk soon.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it, man. See you.
See you, bud. CD, Chris Doering on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line, weighing in on Mullen, some A&M and Ole Miss. He favors A&M with Ole Miss being banged up, and he doesn't think that anybody can challenge Georgia within 2 possessions. So much for my maybe wishful thinking that Bama could get it together. He is right. Their talent. This is hard to believe. the way Bama recruits. They're talent deficient for Bama in the offensive and defensive lines.
Yeah. I mean, it just is what it is.
Wow.
Just proves the dynasty's over and Saban's past his prime.
I'm not going there. I don't know what,
He may never win another game.
Oh, gosh. New Mexico. Did you tell me New Mexico or New Mexico State?
State.
New Mexico State.
Yeah.
Not that any of our listeners know the difference
Not that
between
it
either
matters.
one. No, doesn't. One of them is good in basketball, but who cares? All right. Well, dang. I mean, I'd like somebody. I want somebody to. I'm not anti-Georgia. I grew up a Georgia fan, but I want somebody to challenge because I want good games.
I think the part that to me is more interesting is not because I've been saying I don't think anybody can challenge him in the SEC. What I think is interesting is he said he thinks it would be a 2-possession game with anyone in the playoff.
So even Ohio State, because the only other team
interesting.
that we're really monitoring to challenge Georgia outside of maybe Bama or A&M in the SEC championship game is Ohio State.
Do you have any faith in Oregon?
No.
Really?
No.
I mean, they beat Ohio State at Ohio State.
First game of the year. No. That was many moons ago.
You just hate Joe Moorhead.
That's not true.
Wow, why do you hate him so much?
You're putting words in my mouth. But
so Ohio, that to me is
that's
the
it.
part that stood out.
That's it. It's Ohio. So if that's the case, and Ohio State is good this year, but not like awesome for their standards. So Kirby has flipped this whole thing on everybody, landed the right players, the right 5 stars and 4 stars, because Bama signs them 2. And
except they haven't hit at the QB position. They've just been so good at every other
he's
position.
going to do this with a solid quarterback. When was the last time a solid quarterback was able to lead a team to a national championship in college football?
Jameis Winston. No, just kidding.
I mean, I know Nick Marshall was within 50 seconds, but
Yeah.
it didn't happen.
That's a great question. So
Bryce Young last year was he played behind Mac Jones. Was Mac Jones solid?
I guess he technically was. I mean, he set a
Solid
ton
plus.
of records. I know part of that is how good their offense was. but-
Devontae Smith and all those dudes.
All right, so LSU was Burrow, Clemson was Lawrence, then Clemson before that was Deshaun. Who was 2017 Alabama? Was that Tua's
Tua
walk-off?
when he did the walk-off
So
on
Hurts-
Kirby Smart?
So would you say because Jalen Hurts got them all the way to that point, he was solid? I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's an NFL starter.
At the college level, he was really good.
He was once he got to Oklahoma. How really good was he at Alabama?
Okay, that's a good question.
I don't know. Okay, I mean, you had Ohio State winning with a backup quarterback.
That's it, Cardale
Cordero
Jones. But
Yeah.
that was later in the – okay.
He only played
That's
the
something
last,
to think
5
about.
games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by the Philly Cheesesteak Sandwich at Roosevelt's at Live Oaks, liveoaksgc.com. Kyle Morris, who played quarterback at Florida and owns Live Oaks Golf Club. He'll join us at 9:35. Show is also presented by Havana Smoke Shop for all your premium cigars. 2 locations, I-55 North Jackson and across from Shaggy's at the Reservoir. Olivas, Liga Privadas, Fuentes, Havana Smoke Shop for all your game day sticks at Havana Smoke Shop.